Again, I'm talking about people that are, I don't know what they call that, the Z generation, or what is that?
It would be Z.
Not the last ones.
The end.
The end. Oh my God. So the end doesn't give a shit about that. They just text it on their machines.
PowerPoints, power lunches, conference calls, reply to all, endless meetings, constant check-ins, and so much wasted time. Are you sick of the BS? So are we. It's time to take our time back, rework the way we work, and make every call a call to action. This is a podcast for people who want to stop talking and really start connecting. This is After 12.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to After 12. 12 for 12's original podcast series that explores cool companies, great brands, and compelling messages, and what entices us to buy. Today, I've got Jan Lorenc from Lorenc+Yoo Design Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. And as always, I've got Josh Rush joining us, my co-host. Josh, say hi.
Hi.
Jan, welcome to After 12. How are you doing?
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Great. So you lead a team of architects, graphic designers, interior designers, industrial designers, and you do a tremendous amount of work in the Asian market. You've also been in business for 42 years. You are a European as well as an American. You immigrated at age 8 from Poland. So you've traveled extensively for work and for pleasure. You also designed the very iconic Target logo, which is pretty much in every product I have in my home. How are you doing, and what is the global pandemic bringing you these days?
Well, we're doing fine for the time being. We're probably half of our work is on hold at this point, but even though we're diversified in terms of what we do, this definitely has affected us. Not as much as one certain segment, but it has affected us. And what our clients are doing is some are proceeding ahead, some are waiting to see what's going to happen. Others see this as an opportunity to push concept through so they can get into construction once this thing is resolved.
It's amazing to me that, so much of what you have done in your career in terms of building brands through visual identity, through physical structures, through things that people can see, touch, feel, is now impacted as we can't leave the basement of our homes or wherever we're situated. I know you're in your studio, but your studio's 300 feet from your house. So that's
which is about 300 feet from our studio, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But you guys can't even be together because, Josh, I mean, if anyone's got it,
I'm sure. I'm carrying antibodies right now.
Yes, I'm sure you are. But I mean, how does this impact, in your opinion, Jan, our ability to tell stories visually or physically? If you can't build structures, you really can't install exhibits or monuments.
Well, I think it does impact, but I don't think this thing is going to be forever. I mean, I picked up the Wall Street Journal this morning, and it kind of recalled something from my college days when I got into existential literature. And there was an article about Albert Camus, and he wrote The Plague. And the plague was similar to what we're dealing with now. If you read the thing, yeah. And I have just a minor recollection of it, it caused all this havoc in the Moroccan town, I think, that it was located in. And then once it ended, everyone was shocked, like it ended.
Right.
And then all of a sudden things started going back to normal. But this is not just Morocco. This is the entire world. And I have clients and friends in China, and they're seeing the world opening up again. They're seeing that they're going back to work. They're no longer just in their houses, and they were really in their houses. Hence, the death rate wasn't as significant as it is everywhere else.
Right. Well, I mean, so Have you seen from your friends in China that there has been some sort of catharsis that they have learned from, or grown or changed their tactics from this experience?
I don't know. I mean, as you've traveled, or even up in where you are in Portland, I'm sure you've seen tourists coming from China, and they all wore the masks before this whole thing happened.
Yeah, right.
As I started doing business in China, the SARS epidemic just ended, and they were cautious all the time. But this time, somehow the cat got out of the bag, and it traveled throughout the whole world. So the difference is, you talked about how the world is so open with all this technology that we have now, but the world is different now with the Chinese tourists. They were just scattered everywhere. So this thing just inhibited everything. So now Wuhan is going back to functioning. Yesterday, I think they noted that. So back to in terms of them getting back to work, I talked to people in Chengdu and Guangzhou and in Shanghai, and everyone's going back to work. They're no longer just sitting in the houses. So it's the danger we have here possibly is that it could get started all over again. We don't know if this thing's going to just end. What was amazing was when the Ebola epidemic happened in Africa. We were able to contain that, and it ended pretty briskly, and you don't hear anything more about it. So all these things were kind of known. You listen to a TED Talk by Bill Gates.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this.
Bill Gates talks about this very thing about 5 years ago. He talks about this happening and how do we treat this kind of thing. But the other side of the coin is not just the health portion, it's the economic portion.
Yes.
How do we get back to work? I mean, what things is it going to affect? For example, retail. I mean, we're all shopping on Amazon. We have clients that are not Amazon that are really, upset about this, and this thing is going to change the climate of that. Sporting venues. What's going to happen with that? I mean, our baseball team's going to play in an empty stadium and with no cheers? Probably not.
Right.
Trade shows. I mean, you guys have been, decimated. What happens to trade shows? How do people, for example, as you go purchasing something and you see multitudes of competitors in a convention hall, that is an amazing asset to have, to be able to go out there, to be able to shop these different things, to be able to pick this thing up and say, wow, this is pretty good, as opposed to ordering something online and it comes back and it's a piece of crap.
Right.
So there are different things that we are going to look at. Machinery, equipment, that is going to be something that can't be done through the internet. Travel has been decimated. Nobody's going anywhere. Are we going to be satisfied with watching it on the tube? I doubt it. I think once things get better,
our podcast,
we're going to get back. Art museums have shown their artifacts online, and you look at Michelangelo's David, and it's nice seeing it in photographs. But you want to see the glory of that thing, and you want to be there. At least I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Offices, on the other hand, because people are working remotely, that may be one of the single ones that it may change the complexion of that. Of course, it'll depend on whether you got a bunch of dogs and cats and things running in the background. So that may not work. But it's a temporary thing, but I mean, 2 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I mean, Jan, that having done so much work in the trade show, exhibit design space, how crazy it can be. But I love to hear you say that, it is one of those industries. It is one of those marketing functions that is essential to doing business. And I think we all agree that, it will come back, but you just said it, is it 12 months, 18 months, 24 months from now? We don't know. I mean, I can't imagine life without trade shows from a business perspective, but from a personal, personally, it's like, I can't imagine life without sports for that length of time.
Not only that, I mean, for the last 13 years, you've been working with companies in Asia. I mean, you've been working with, Samsung and giant brands what will this mean for, the kind of the tack where we go more nationalist and we stop kind of global markets, or we secularize in our own countries?
Actually, you got to make a good point. One of my clients is with Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL, and he just wrote a piece in the Urban Land Institute magazine. And it was kind of interesting because his piece talked about local vendors. And one of the reasons I think he focused on that so much is because the proliferation of brands in retail have gotten to the point where, nobody gives a crap anymore. I can order that thing online because it's the same thing. Or if you go to a local vendor and you get this fabulous sandwich, you're not going to go to McDonald's anymore.
Right. No,
So it's going to change the complexion of retail, of entertainment and streetscape. So his position at JLL is that, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we rebuild a different retail environment? So the same thing might happen in trade shows. For example, we talked about, Adam, a minute ago about the idea of, you've got clients in place and this point in time has happened to my firm 6 or 7 times. You just go into this hole and you got to figure out, how do you make it out of this hole? And one way to make it out of this hole is we're not talking face to face, but we're kind of talking face to face. But the idea is that you try to get some connection with these clients that presently have time to talk. Yeah. So this is an opportune time to figure out, how do we rebuild a different position in the interim? How do you bring value to that client that's used to having that trade show? And engage with them and say, I've got some ideas in the interim, how we can help you. And you maintain that client during this period. And then when it comes back, you're all that more valuable to them.
Well, and I think that argument has kind of predicated even this global pandemic, right? I mean, Jeff Bezos and Amazon created an environment where you could just buy anything at any time, even if you weren't the manufacturer of it. You could sell it. And I just, to me, now creating a more one-to-one connection, a more local or curated or craft thing is, I think people want that. They want the story. They want to know who you are. They want to have a relationship with the work, the product, more than just one click. And definitely the single click is convenient. But what we get with convenience, we lose with the personal touch or the feeling that there is trust or loyalty or quality. You said it yourself, Jan. It's like so much of the shit we buy, which is just that. It's funny to me. It doesn't. I love the whole parable nature of COVID-19 and coronavirus, because it's like, you've got the biggest manufacturing country in the world, China, and the biggest consumer country in the world, the United States. And, the fact that we are in this situation with the symbiotic relationship we have with global trade. I mean, the fact that we can get in a plane and go anywhere at any time, and it's become normal for us. And now, for the three of us who travel quite a bit, it's kind of, it's been a new normal to have to work and stay in place and use, cameras to communicate with people. It's a strange time. I think, we're going to adapt to it. I don't know if I had a real point beyond that, but it's just the whole metaphoric nature of this thing is, I almost feel like this was coming before, that we need this in a way that sounds horrible. I don't want thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to die, but it's just, I feel like we needed to stop. We needed just to check in. I don't know.
Well, I also think too, that was a lot to unpack there. Yeah, thank you. But I think I'm going to come back to the point about sort of the localization and what that does, especially as it relates to the design of spaces. Jan, you just touched on that. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to rethink what the current retail landscape looks like. Even here just in Alpharetta, obviously you've got like the Avalon, but you've got the entire North Point Mall complex. Well, what opportunities, can come out of that, where you could have obviously the mixed use type of environments that we're used to, but maybe there's whether it's fulfillment centers or small kind of local manufacturing that happens. I think there are tremendous opportunities to create, kind of reimagine what it means to live and work and play, in a design environment, like something like North Point Mall. Jan, I don't know if you've ever thought about that.
No, I think that those are going to have to change. And they're, what we've seen over the last couple of decades is industries have gotten decimated by the internet. I mean, bookstores, so many different things. I mean, Amazon wants to take over the world. So it's just, but are people going to be happy doing what we're doing right now, talking like this? I doubt it. They're not going to be happy. They want to go somewhere where they can be immersed by the space. They can appreciate it. You see a shot of the Taj Mahal and say, oh, that's nice. But being in that whole space, seeing the birds flying by, it's just a whole different experience. And as we talk about, going back to retail again and actually something to do with trade shows, is the generation that's even, younger than you guys, they want that experience. And how do we create that experience? We can't really do a Star Trek immersion where you're in this space and you're going to be so satisfied with it. There's no such thing. Right. You gotta go back with the experience of the trade show is something that is almost like it's a very much like retail. You're going to that marketplace. You're seeing 27 competitors that you can look at and see what their wares are all about. You can touch the item. You can experience the item. You can try on the item. So there's so many different things that the young generation really looks at. So what are you guys and what are your younger guys going to be after? Are they going to be happy looking at their iPhone? I doubt it. I think they want to be somewhere when this thing when this thing blows over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to know, Jan, because you touched on it, not directly, but we're currently sprinting at a full pace towards virtual solutions, virtual environments, ways to bring people together to connect in ways that are more meaningful than what we're doing right now, using just this conference platform. So we could start to be able to create new worlds. And it's actually pretty exciting, to see what's possible. And I'm curious what you think about, a move towards virtual or mixed reality environments.
I mean, we worked on a project for Related called Hudson Yards in New York City in Manhattan. And this was when it was first starting to get planned, which is probably 6 or 7 years ago. This was for a trade show. And we did one of the things they wanted those headsets, I forget what they're called, that Facebook owns. And the problem was that the technology that they used on the thing looked so rinky-dink that you go around and it's like, ooh. And then the way we set it up on the trade show was this guy sitting in this chair, and he looked like he was in an electric chair, like, what is it? Like Ray Charles, he's just kind of looking like this, and you see this guy in there.
No disrespect to Ray Charles.
It's shitty technology. So if you get shitty technology, you put the immersion there, it's like big whoop. What is that going to do? I mean, looking at that model that they had in that trade show, well, to me, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but that model, to me, you could kind of go around, you experience it, boom, you got it. I got it. I understand it. Yeah. And then we had a client in Canada. We're doing a retail center conversion not conversion, but an enhancement with residential. And everything was done in Revit and some kind of a technology that allowed you to walk down the streets and kind of walk around. And
so you got hit by a car.
I don't know. I mean, we did make it was an improvement from the crappy technology that we had for this amazing project in New York.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of, it wasn't the quality of a game platform. I mean, you're not going to pay, nobody's going to pay for that kind of quality because they're not going to resell this thing. It's just sometimes it's a one-time use. So you got to be careful, what people are used to virtual reality wise, what you can afford are two different things.
Well, you're also talking
you're also talking about like the way we interact in the meta, so much of personal relationships and eye contact and the space between two human beings is the fact that you read body language, that you can get an idea of their energy, that you feel where they are. If they're in a bad mood, if they're in a good mood, that if they're paying attention to you. With virtual reality or any sort of platform between that, even this camera, I mean, right now, my camera, I'm looking into this lens, but you're seeing me from the lens on my computer. I mean, there's a certain amount of, just relational vertigo that you get from that. How do you feel, knowing that 13 years you've been in Asia, how do you feel that this move maybe to more national or local will influence that need for communication, meta, and the respect that you said to me yesterday that you've been getting from having these personal relationships, even though you don't speak the language?
As I mentioned to you, when we first started to try to get the work in China, we talked just over the phone. This was before this kind of technology existed. So when we talked to them over the phone, we weren't making a headway. So 6 months into the future, I was thinking, we're not going to make that connection until I get that eye contact with that individual face to face. Not even, I don't know if this even existed. It didn't exist back then. GoToMeeting or Zoom or whatever. I don't think that would have made a difference. I think meeting that person, having dinner with that person, getting some kind of connection with that person, to me was very understandable. For young generation, again, I'm talking about people that are, I don't know what they call that, the Z generation, or what is that?
It would be
not the last ones.
The end.
The end. Oh my God. So the end doesn't give a shit about that. They're just texted on their machines. They don't, they get a job. They post the job. They don't see anybody. They don't understand that they got to build a relationship with that employer. They don't understand. So I don't know. So what happens with this Z generation that is going out there and not making that personal contact? So they're just like every Tom, Dick, and Harry. They can be blown off immediately. There's no relationship. Right. I mean, we have a little bit of a relationship through this. We met personally.
Yeah.
Adam doesn't give a shit about me, but you do.
No. But I mean, but actually, I mean, again, just thinking about relationships and connections. I mean, we met Jan through one of our former clients. It was one of Reed's, who's the owner of the company. One of his longtime friends and clients, Tom Wright, lives in Alpharetta. So it was Tom and the Nina paper connection is how we initially got synced up. And and I had studio envy when I came and toured your space, because as I was telling Adam, you've got this conference room, it's like dual purpose conference room and design library that really it's the most impressive design library I've ever seen. I think there's maybe one of the guys in New York runs the agency, Collins, has got a pretty cool design library too, but I think yours takes the cake. Yeah.
Wow,
so I love that you legitimately do have studio envy. I've seen it before when you stare at other people's like design spaces and they're like, do you want a coffee or can you sit down? No, I'm just and so Jan, as somebody that has seen in your 40 plus years of experience in this industry, things scaling upwards is kind of, it's intuitive to be the positive thing. You want that ascendancy, you want to scale upwards. I mean, a great case in point is the Target brand. In 2013, Target tried to scale into Canada, which is a North American market, but totally different from the US. And it didn't work. The big box concept of scaling up and having a huge array of assortment was not what the Canadian culture wanted. How do you feel that COVID-19 or this pandemic we're in now is going to affect the perception of scale and scaling in design?
I think it may. I think there may be the boxes are still going to be here. The successful boxes are still going to be here. The unsuccessful boxes aren't going to be here. Many retail centers are already, even before this whole thing was was here. They were going not out of fashion, but out of popularity. And there's an overabundance of humdrum retail. So how do you? I mean, I don't know if I can answer that the scale part in terms of.
It's okay. He always talks about scaling on this show.
Yeah, and in deference to...
Let me tell you about scale. Let me tell you a little bit about different scale. And that's my scale is different from your scale. So my scale is I've always wanted to do a lot of different stuff. And but I never wanted... at one point, I did want to have 25 people. And we had like 20 people. It drove me friggin' crazy to have all these cats to try to manage them. But what the thing was I enjoy having a very limited scale. With this limited scale, as I told you, we were able to land and compete with people to do the UPS thing for China for the Olympics against Morton.
Jack Morton, yeah,
and other things. We did. We competed against two pretty well-known designers, artists on the Samsung project that we did in Germany, and we were selected. So, and then in China, we worked for the largest mega developers in China. And here we are, this little tiny firm that is able to work for these mega firms, and they trust us. They hire us. They don't just hire a mega firm because they're a mega firm. That's what generally winds up happening in most cases. But if these clients want something, I feel they want something more personal touch. They want something that they can be proud of. They wind up hiring a smaller firm. We've been fortunate to have that opportunity.
Last question, Jan. If you could do anything else in your life, what would you do?
Probably sculpture, which I do on a regular basis once a week, where I create something. There's no client, no budget, no comment. I create something, I put it in my garden. I love it. If I hate it, I just make it into pieces of stone, crash, boom, bang. And then some of them have gotten built into 30-foot pieces in China. So that's been exciting, where I do something that's creative and I'm not doing any marketing. I just go to the studio, create something with my hands, with the dirt that I put between my fingers. And at the end of a 3-hour session, I've got this thing, and I either like it, I don't like it, or I use it as a stepping stone to something else. So that's what I've been doing the last 4 years, when my wife got me a gift certificate to this studio that I'm part of on a weekly basis. Now I'm not a part of it, but I've got the clay downstairs in the studio. Yeah, I'm going to keep building this stuff. And then when the world reopens again, I'll fire these things.
What are the topics or the subjects of your sculpture in quarantine looking like?
I don't know if you can see anything back there.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I was thinking it'd be more dystopian.
So there's Two-Faced. See, this kind of stuff has been kind of a piece.
Nice. Very cool.
So they look cool. They look concerned, but they look positive. Concerned, positive. But then there's this beast coming out of the head saying, I want more, feed me more, feed me more. So, I've got things that I've got to figure out here. So that's some of that. And then some of them look like they're troubled. They got proportions. I just look at certain parts of this thing, where one of my favorite pieces is from Rodin. And Rodin didn't always look at proportions. He looked at the drama of the piece. So, and they vary. They vary in terms of what I wind up getting involved in that evening. It may be Two-Face. It may be, I did one that had 17 faces on it, and it was just a little bit too much.
You need to get those guys into some PPE ASAP.
Yeah.
Well, Jan, it's been a total pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for being on our show. Very, very popular podcast. Again, I want to just bring in our special guest Zoltar to give his prediction for the pandemic and the end of the world. Zoltar, what do you think?
Hear your fortune from Zoltar. Men of genius are admired. Men of wealth are envied. Men of power are feared. But only men of character are trusted.
And you truly are a man of character, Jan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Jan.
much.